Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cosplay Crunch. Each week, we gather to talk all things cosplay and conventions, from personal experiences, useful tips and advice, horror stories, and hot takes, and sometimes the latest news and drama. We have it all. I'm your host, Zavich Cosplay, and on this episode, we are joined by a very old friend, a ex-cosplayer turned artiste professional. Welcome all the Dwagons, aka Larissa. Hello.
Hello.
I'm so happy
I
you're
am
here.
surrounded by my dragons, my namesake.
Oh, literally, if you are
Yes.
if you are watching the video format of this episode, you will see that behind Larissa there are racks and racks and racks of, are those all enamel pins?
Mostly, and then there's also like charms and stuff over here too.
Oh
So
my god. And there's plushies overflowing out the top corner. That is
that's just
not
my own collection of
merchandise.
stuff. Not only
And
do I
then
sell dragons, I myself collect dragons.
absolutely. And then what are in those other, like those like black ones with the orange like,
Those are the ones I travel to cons with. So those are like full of the charms and stuff that I bring.
oh my
So yeah.
god, it's so much. This is the
And
life of the
this is just
artist.
one side of the room. There's more junk.
Oh my god. Well, we're gonna get all into all of it, but we're gonna start this episode with how we start most episodes. And even though you don't cosplay anymore, we are gonna go back to the beginning and talk about how you got into the convention scene and cosplay. So I want you to talk about that. Like, how did you first find conventions? What was your first convention? Did you cosplay at your first convention, and how did you get into all of it?
So I started the unfortunate way that a lot of people did around, it was 2012. So I was into Homestuck at the time.
Live. We're gonna.
So unfortunately, but I had done an art piece at school when I was in high school, and it was of the trolls, and it was on the wall in the hallway, and that's how I found a couple other people at my school. We started a Homestuck club and everything.
Wait, time out. You made Homestuck art and then they put it in the hallway of your school?
Well, they're like everyone. It was like the art hallway. It was like full
Oh,
of
okay, okay,
everyone's art.
okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like your piece
No,
featured
no,
and like framed as like the Homestuck art.
no. But that's how I found the other people that liked Homestuck, and we all like got together and we were like, oh, we want like I don't remember who it was that like talked about the cons because I didn't know about them really before that. But they're like, oh, I know there's a bunch of other people that go to this for Homestuck. We should do that this summer. So we all planned to go. It was like my whole like group of friends that did this Homestuck club. And so my first cosplay, it wasn't a troll at least, but I did do PM with, I don't even remember what the abbreviation's for at this point, but it was like this wolf dog with wings and stuff. I
Oh
went
my
kind of,
god.
it was a weird cosplay for my first cosplay, but and I decided to enter the cosplay contest with it.
Wait. So your very first cosplay you ever made was this like wolf dog winged monster thing. And then you were like, I'm gonna enter this cosplay contest, having never been to a convention before, having never made a cosplay before. We're just gonna go for
No,
this and do it.
I guess I decided to because before that I had done I'd done art contests like with
Hmm.
sculptures and stuff, and I guess in my mind cosplay always ended up being just an extension of my art. So I guess that's why I was like, oh, I'll enter the contest. Why not? So even though I had no idea what I was doing really.
Oh my gosh. What convention was that?
It was Acon. So it was Acon 2012 was my first convention and first time cosplaying. So
Okay, nice. So you went with your Homestuck. Wait, I think it's so funny also that you didn't make, because was there an anime club at your school?
I don't think so, or if there was one, I don't remember there being one. So
Okay, because I was gonna say it's
yeah.
so weird that you were like, we're gonna make a Homestuck specific club, not like an anime club, not like a like. Well, I
No.
know it wasn't Japanese because like it's Homestuck was like the web comic, and I don't know
Yeah.
what origin that was, but I feel like that would fall under the general umbrella of like nerd club. But you were
Yeah.
like, no, we're taking it to the next
I think
level. It's gonna be a Homestuck
I don't
club.
think you understand. Did you had already gone to cons in 2012 or not at that point?
My first convention was in 2013, so just a year
Okay, it was
later.
still big then. Like it,
Yeah,
Homestuck was huge at the time. Like
huge.
people were obsessed with it. That's kind of why there was a club just for Homestuck. So
Okay, I can see
yeah.
that.
It
I
was
can see
just I just
that.
remember like the cons were flooded with like the Homestuck photo, like the group photo shoot from that was huge that year. So it was, yeah, it was kind of
I mean,
crazy.
when we were at OniCon just a few, I guess now it's like a month ago we were at
Hmm.
OniCon, and Sammy Stitch Crimes had brought her plastic jar of Homestuck horns
I made
with
so many of
her.
those
Oh my
myself
god.
too.
And she had them at the table. She was like, "Take them. They're from 10 years ago. They're a relic at this point." Oh my god. I was like, "This is crazy."
I feel like there's actually been a little bit of a resurgence. I've noticed like coming to my table at conventions, like there's been some Homestuck cosplayers again. Surprisingly,
Oh wow.
they're still out
That's
there.
still there, still kicking it. Um So after your first convention at ACON 2012, your first cosplay, did you then just like decide that you wanted to keep going to conventions thereafter? And did you like stick at ACON or did you go to any other conventions in like the
So I
area?
specifically remember getting like a fan that was advertising Anime Fest while at the ACON. So that's how I found out about Anime Fest. So I think I also went to A Fest that year in like a different Homestuck. I think I did like a basic troll, I think, for that one.
Mm,
But I did go to ACON and A Fest for the like next couple summers. So
okay.
those were like the only two I did for the longest time because I'm from around Dallas. So
Right. And
yeah,
you were cosplaying throughout like 2014, 2015,
it
20
was
what 20
2012 to like 2016,
Yeah.
I think.
And you were in you weren't doing art yet professionally at that point, right?
No, I always took art classes and then I went to college for art, but I was I was doing it for sculpture because in my mind, because I always did like the armor builds and like things and prop build, like I didn't do as much of the sewing, so it's like in my mind it was like sculpture that you wore.
Right.
So I was going for sculpture. So that's kind of like, so I was always doing art stuff, but not like I considered my cosplay my art, but I wasn't doing anything like this at the time, like with my business. It was that came a lot later, actually, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I liked doing art and I wanted to do a career in art, but I had no idea what I was gonna do.
Yeah, like what
So,
avenue that would
mm-hmm.
take or
Because I know
that
for cosplay it's so hard to make into a career.
oh, so
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And it's interesting that you're putting you kind of approach cosplay with the mindset as an artist because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that fall into cosplay, they don't have necessarily an art background. They don't have like a sewing background. They just kind of like, oh, I want to make this costume.
Yeah.
I want to be this character. I'm going to just do it. Like I know for myself, like I didn't really do much artistic things really until I started cosplaying, but you had some experience with like drawing and sculpture and
Mm-hmm.
things, and that fed into cosplay. So for you, cosplay was just an extension of your artistic,
Yeah.
I guess, expression. Whereas for a lot of people, it's not necessarily, they don't have like an art background that lead into that. So that's interesting that
Mm-hmm.
like you were equating your armor builds that you made to like sculpture because it kind of is. It's just a
Yeah.
different form.
Yeah, so it
So
was Homestuck at first, but then it turned into League cosplays. That's kind of like the only other
just as
fandom of.
bad. Just as bad. No.
I
have
mean,
you
you're not
seen
wrong.
Have you seen the memes recently where it's like, I love Arcane, but you will never get me on that League of Legends game. You will never get me there.
It's for the better if you don't.
I tell this story and I think I might have told this story before on this. Oh yeah, I did. But like basically like the last time I played League of Legends ever with Andrew, my partner, was whenever I was playing and I was in like a lane and I was so horrible that they walked around me and they didn't even bother to kill me. They just literally walked around me in the lane. I was like, I'm done. This was
Well, League is
horrible.
very not beginner friendly. To be fair, it's like impossible to get into without if unless you dedicate like a lot of time to learn it. But I guess that's also something we didn't mention is that I know you through Andrew, which is kind of different
Yeah.
also.
It is interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
my partner Andrew and you Larissa, you guys went to school together.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I met you was at ACON. I think it was ACON 2016.
I
And
think so.
you were
Yeah.
in Italy, I think,
Mm-hmm.
from League of Legends.
And I think yours was the Final Fantasy cosplay.
I was in well that
It
weekend
was
I
like
wore
the
a few different costumes, but I
it's
was
like the
specifically
orange. ears and
Like
tail.
Fox
Yeah,
Boy.
yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was from Fire Emblem.
Oh,
Yeah,
Fire
Fire
Emblem.
Emblem,
Yes.
Fire Emblem
Hmm.
Fates. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
And that was
And
my first
we
time
met.
meeting you. Was while we were in cosplay too.
Yes, it was for something to cosplay, and that was the first convention that Andrew had ever gone to
Mm.
because you had been friends with him since like how long? Like a long time before that, right?
So I technically met him in like third grade, but we became friends. I think it was end of middle school was when I actually
Yeah.
became friends with him. So I've known him a long time.
So like from end
But
of middle school all the way up through college
mm,
years, he had never gone to like an actual convention,
he
even though
made
you were
fun of me for
going.
doing it.
I know he made fun of you for going to conventions, and I was like, "What's wrong with you?" And then I remember the very first time I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to ACON in Dallas." He was like, "Oh, I'll go," and you were like, "What the fuck?" Like
It's just so
you
funny.
you made fun of me for years for dressing up in my Homestuck horns and my gray body paint, and now you're going to a convention. Although let's be fair, he didn't dress up for his first convention,
It's fine. You don't
but
have to go to conventions
it's
at least.
true. It's true. But he did go.
Hmm.
And I remember to this day that he always talks about this giant bat. I don't even know if it was technically a furry, but it was like a bat creature on stilts that was like
Mm.
looming around the Hilton Anatole at Acon, and it traumatized him and me to an extent. And I remember that shit like it was yesterday. But yeah, we met at that ACON through
Hmm.
Andrew. And at that point, still, I was in school. I think you were in
Hmm.
school, and neither of us knew. Well, at that point in time, like I had not been cosplaying for that long. Certainly hadn't like done much in cosplay in terms of like traveling or awards or
Yeah.
anything like that. You hadn't started doing art, so it is kind of crazy sitting here almost 10 years later being like, you this is your full career. It's crazy. And
It's
like I've done so much this year with cosplay. It's just wild just to like look back and be like, what the hell?
like who knew, like if we were then not, I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing this. Like most people don't even know this is a career option, to be fair. So it's like, and even with cosplay, like how far, like how much that's changed since when we started. It's like
Oh my
crazy.
gosh, I know. It's gotten so different, and it's gone through so many different like ebbs and flows and like changes. So no, I completely see that. It is, you look back at all of it and you're like, wow, I'm still here. I'm still doing this thing. Although it did change because like for you, and we're gonna talk about that next, like your artistic expression and your involvement with the con scene changed from cosplay to actually becoming an artist. So I
Mhm.
want to talk about cosplay for one more second. What kind of made you transition from cosplaying into starting to do your art? And I wouldn't even call it like your art business at the beginning, because I don't think it
Mhm.
was like your, I don't think that you could have anticipated that this would become your whole life back when you first
No,
started.
because so for the first 2 years or so, so I'm trying to even remember what was my final push, because I knew about Artist Alley by attending conventions as a cosplayer, and I think at the time I was like, I liked the idea of it, but I was like, I have no idea what I would do. Like, what could I do that would work for that? Like, I for the longest time I didn't know, and I was going to college for I had a sculpt I was going for a sculpture degree, and I was doing cosplay with that, but in my sculpture class, I learned about resin casting. And then I was like, I finally felt like I had a way to mass produce stuff to fill out a table. That's kind of how that happened. Because I didn't do as much of the 2D art at the time. I was mostly doing the 3D art. So that started with like my figurines and things like that. So I remember I kind of just I applied to Anime Fest because it was local to me, and I actually got a table. And I was like, oh well, now I have to actually figure this all out while going to college and having a job and everything. But like that whole summer, like I was preparing for it. Oh, I guess I was kind of skipping over the fact of why I kind of stopped with my interest in cosplay
Oh
before
yeah,
even
yeah, yeah.
that, because part of it was I would dedicate so much time and money, and I entered a couple contests after that first one, like when I actually knew more what I was doing. um and it always felt like it was so much work for so little payoff, honestly. At least like for me, when I was trying to balance like the school and work and everything with it. And and the kind of I told you about how kind of the final straw that like killed my interest in cosplay. So I loved my Ice Drake Shyvana that I did. My That's definitely my best cosplay I did.
From
And
League of
I was
Legends, the
mhm,
white, well, not white one. It's like blue and
yeah, the blue
icy, and it has
dragon.
like, yeah, yeah, blue dragon lady.
So I entered the cosplay contest for Anime Fest, and it went great. I had a great time. I remember you were running around with my big dragon arms and
Hmm.
everything. But so they had the contestants in like a different room with like a TV showing the stage. And when they were announcing the winners, there was at one point where the judge like she couldn't say the name, so someone else yelled out a different name. So that person went on stage, and because everyone in the room was yelling, I couldn't hear. And they went on stage and no one said anything, and I left. I went home, and I found out when I got home I was supposed to win the judges award. And
How
I
did
was
you
just
find
like,
out? Like, how did you even find out?
a
I
bunch
don't.
of people were cosplaying, like they were commenting on my cosplay page on Facebook. They were like, "You won. Where'd you go?" I'm like, so like all that work. Cause I literally like, because that was a big costume. It was like full
Yeah.
armor and everything. And I was like, if I don't win with this, okay, I'm not gonna win anything. And then I didn't even get to enjoy my win, so it was just kind of like, I don't know.
Did
It
you
really
ever
killed.
get that award at any point in time after?
Yeah, I went back the next day, and it was like I don't know if it was a physical award or if it was just like a prize pack. I don't remember at
Uh
this
huh.
point, but it was kind of like the point would have been that your moment on stage, like showing off the costume one last time. But I don't know. That kind of killed my interest a little bit. I did do one costume after that, but like that kind of made it so I was like, okay, well, it's not like you can really make a living off the cosplay with winning them anyways. It's not like that was the goal, but it was just kind of like if I'm going to school for sculpture and I'm considering this like my work, I'm like, what is the end goal with that? So like,
Right.
so when I did, so going back to, I learned how to resin cast, and I was able to mass produce enough of my dragon figures, so like I had enough product. And then I also did do some stickers and other things like that you expect from Artist Alley. But when I did, like, I was like, I spent that whole summer preparing for that and researching about that. And like there's a bunch of great resources, even like more so now even than when I started for Artist Alley. But so I spent that whole summer preparing for that Anime Fest table, and everyone online was like, "Oh, be happy to break even on your first table. Don't expect a whole lot, you know." And I ended up making way more than breaking even in that weekend. In fact, the first day I was like selling out of stuff, I had to raise my prices, like so I wouldn't run out of
Yeah.
stuff.
Let's talk about that too. So, first of all, let's talk about the fact that you literally had to increase your price from the Friday to the Saturday because you were selling things too quickly and you had
Mm-hmm.
no idea what to price anything because it was your very first
Yeah, it's
time.
my first time.
So you were like, well, this is clearly selling too fast. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
change that. But also talk about the fact that so your sculpture led into you making your first merch, which was your
Mm-hmm.
little dragon pieces that were resin casted and like hand painted. All
Mm-hmm.
of them hand painted with tiny little paintbrushes. And then your scissors that were hand cut, each of
Or,
them.
and I also did. Oh yeah, I hand cut my scissors. I haven't done that since that first year, so I'm like, never again. It's not worth it. Um, but I also like I had. Oh yeah, I had hand folded like 60 origami dragons that I also sold, and like I I way undercharged for everything that year, but I didn't know better. A lot of people don't when they start. Like I said, the resources now are even better than then. Like that's the same with cosplay. Like the resources have just gotten so good to learn about all this now. But it's
Mhm.
like, and that kind of opened my eyes to like, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep trying. Like I get to share my art with people that actually really like it, which is so that's the kind of like I wanted that justification for my cosplay, which was nice. Like you get this like people ask for your picture and stuff, and you can win cosplay contests. But like with the artist alley stuff, it's like a very tangible reward for your work. So
Mhm.
it's like I guess also like the concept of my booth, where that came from was for some. It started in like middle school. Like I'm just obsessed with dragons. It's a common thing. Like a lot of people love dragons, and that's kind of like my love for dragons. And I would go to these cons looking for dragon merch and couldn't find all that much stuff. So I was like, I guess I'll make the booth because I know if I want it, other people will want it. So that whole concept was my like starting point, was like I want more dragon stuff. I know others will. So like that's kind of was the idea.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. I was like, "What? Why dragons or dwagons or both?" But no, that makes sense. So
Mhm.
you had an affinity for liking dragons growing up, and so
Mhm.
it's just really interesting how all of this came so organically and from a very genuine space for you,
Mhm.
because like it started with a like a genre and a fantasy aspect that you really liked and had interest in, and a likeness for sculpture and art, and then you just merge those two things together and we're like, well, let's just see what happens. And then you sold your stuff and people ate it up. And so from there, did you just like do like more and more conventions thereafter, or did you kind of slowly build? I guess what was like kind of the, because after your very first convention, I can't imagine that you were like, oh, I sold really well, all right, time to throw everything else away and go 100% into this,
No,
right?
I for my first year after that, at least I was still in college. I was still working. I was still like, luckily I actually had a job that I literally could work on my dragon stuff in the downtime at my job. So like that also helped that I could work on that at my job at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But so like it was kind of like I was just doing this alongside all that, kind of building up like more designs and looking into more events I could do. I did a lot of really small like one day events in the beginning because I was like I wanted to do more events, and applications are way in advance for bigger shows. So I was kind of desperate to like try to do more events. So I did like a lot of smaller local events in the beginning just to kind of get the experience and to get my stuff out there more. Um, and I actually met my current group of friends at like one of those one day. So actually, by your house, there's like this Kinokuniya.
Mm-hmm.
There was an event at the Kinokuniya, like a mini artist alley that I did there, and that's how I
Oh.
met some of my like core artist alley friends, was at that little event.
Oh, really?
Mhm. So like it kind of also helped that I had like a group that we did it all together, and we like all apply and travel to these like we started in Texas, traveling around Texas like to shows and things like that. But I continued to have like success with it, so like I kept going with it, and I also started an online store after that first convention as well, so I can build that online. Um, Even to this day, though, it's not my main income compared to the shows, but like it's a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it just kept growing, and I kept realizing like I wasn't enjoying what I was doing in college with because I was doing like more sculpture stuff, and I was gonna do another cosplay build, but I was kind of like, why am I paying to go to college to work on something I was gonna work on anyways? I guess that was a big step. Was so I got my associates, but I was working on my bachelor's, and it was a huge decision to decide to drop out. My parents were
Mm-hmm.
not happy.
Well, can I imagine that's pretty scary, right? Because that's like
Yeah.
breaking the norms of what everyone in like society is like. Oh, well, you have to get a degree, you have to do this step and then this step. But like
Hmm.
for you to, so like what kind of went into the decision for you? Because I think there's a lot of people that might be listening who are either currently like getting their degree, or they might like not know if they want one, or they might want to be an artist. So like kind of what were you weighing in your head when you were trying to make the decision?
So I feel like art is a bit of a different field in terms of it's so subjective compared to like obviously needing to learn how to do certain things. Like with art, you can learn those things without schooling. Like, and there's a lot of online options for that schooling. Um, so like one of my arguments is like I can literally watch courses online to learn how to do these things. I didn't feel like I was actually I still didn't know what my end job goal was through the college course I was taking. Like I didn't have a set like I was sitting there with my little like dragon figures and things like that, and while these people had these like giant like metal sculptures, abstract, like I'm like I just felt so out of place at that point. I was like, while conventions were really where like that's where I would fit in, where I my stuff really shined. So it was just kind of like it was a big decision. I had to really convince my parents that I was like, at least let me take this like semester off and prove like I can keep doing this, and like showing them the numbers, showing them like there's something to this. Like there's
Hmm.
definitely potential like to like keep growing this. Um so yeah, that I think that was like a year after my first convention I made that decision because it was going to I was like I didn't know where I was. That's the thing with art, there's so many different career paths and different like but there, it's so hard to decide like what specific job because a lot of people end up freelancing or a lot of people end up like with graphic design jobs that are more, like
Right.
that's a more direct like career path. But like with me, I didn't know what I was gonna do. Like I at one point I was like, oh, what if I did cosplay commissions? But it's like the amount of
That's a
hours to
dark,
the how much
oh
you could charge for
girl.
that is just like
Cosplay commissions is a dark, dark hole. And like I think some people can do it really well and they thrive off of
mhm.
it. And it's just it takes so much work, it's so much energy. People aren't willing generally to pay what it's worth.
Yeah, for
They
the
don't
amount of work it is. Yeah.
understand, yeah, they don't understand the amount of work that you have to put into it all. So no, I can see that. So basically you took a break from school. You're like, let me
Hmm.
see if I can actually make this work. And clearly you did. And then you just kept going from there, right?
Yeah, and because I think I did between little shows and slightly bigger cons, I think I did 15 in the first year. But again, some of them were smaller; they weren't the big ones. But my first, so with the like group of friends, they told me about Fanime. Fanime was my first out of state convention that
Was
I
it
went
really?
to. That was the first time I flew to a con, which was a huge, like, I was like, it's such a big risk,
Yeah, it's a
like,
risk. It's
hmm
expensive.
but that ended up blowing any other event I had done at the time out of the water. So it was a that was a huge motivator also that that went so well.
In terms of like how many
Mhm.
sales you made and everything.
Mhm.
Would you say like, and I wanted to talk about this too, was like, how do you decide what conventions to attend? Like, because obviously, like, okay, you say like a library con, right? Or like a 1 day con or something like that. When you go, sorry,
Brian's
I
moving
thought
my camera, sorry.
you're good. I thought that was
I
an
was like, you're
earthquake.
moving it mid video. Okay.
It's okay. We're loose and easy
It's
here.
okay.
No, so you there's a cost investment and then there's a
Mhm.
return, right? Because when you're going to like a local con and it might be like a 1 day con, you might not have to pay for a hotel room, you want to pay for a flight. You're like really the table's probably going to be so inexpensive, so like the risk
Mhm.
is so low, but the return obviously for a small convention is probably going to be a lot lower than going to a much larger convention with multiple tens of thousands of people. But there's going to be flight costs, hotel costs, the tables are going to be more expensive.
There's so many
You have
factors.
Yeah, so how do you like decide what conventions to go to? Like how did you know that Fanime was going to be worth your while and you weren't going to like end up losing on the investment of just getting there?
So it's a con so you can't just go based on attendance or just based on like there's so many factors, and even just like each individual artist will do differently, and like it's it's a hard it's a very hard process of figuring out what will be worth it, and it's something you have to learn. Like you can there's not that's why there's not just like one list out there that ever like because it's gonna be different for everyone. But I think for Fanime it was because I think I had heard from most artists like that's like one of the artist alleys to be a part of. They're very competitive. I've only gotten to go one other time since that first time because they have like over 2,000 artists apply every year and there's only like 200 something tables.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
That's a whole other discussion is how competitive it has become since I started. Because more and more there's more artists talking about doing conventions and there are more people making it careers. I feel like it used to not be as common, but it's become more common to become a career. Um, but it's a combination of researching what past artists have said about events, which there's a lot of resources like Discords and Facebook groups that are specifically about artist alleys. Um, so I kind of just have like some baseline like stuff I look for, like if it is at least a certain, well, it's attendance plus the ratio of tables. That's kind of more what you look at instead of just attendance.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Like ratio of tables?
So if a convention is 10,000 people, but then they have like over 500 tables, like the money's going to be spread more thin. Versus if it's a smaller artist alley, you'll make more money. So even if the convention's
Oh.
not that big, if the artist alley's not that big, you could still do really well. Like an example, I just got reaccepted to Comic Con, which is in Alabama. But so it's not that big a convention, but they have a really tiny artist alley. So for me, it has always been really good.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Okay.
mhm. So that's why you can't just go based on attendance, and sometimes you can't even go based on what other people have said, because like I've said, like it's so different for each artist. So like me with my dragons might do differently at cons with someone that's just all like Genshin stuff or anime stuff. So it's like,
Yeah. That's
so
a
you
good
kind of have
point.
to make sure it's the right audience.
Yeah, do you find like certain genres of conventions do better for you than others?
So I almost exclusively do anime cons. I do also do. I think the only non-anime con I really do is like Dragon Con, which is considered more of a general pop culture con. But that's from my experience. The only time I tried a Comic Con was my local Dallas Fan Expo, and for me was the audience was just not there for my stuff. So I haven't really tried to do any other Comic Cons. I might try again because it's been so long since I did that, and my stuff has changed a lot since then. But yeah, it's just that each audience is a little different. Like Comic Cons, it's a lot more. They're there for the guests and autographs and things like
Hmm.
that instead of the
Mm-hmm.
artists. Anime cons, people are there for the artists a lot of the time.
I think that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty accurate too. And then like there's the weird like kind of in between with like the video game conventions where like
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird mix of things because like most of your dragon art is from video game media, right? Like
It's
you
a
have
mix of like
others
video
too, but
games and animes and movies and just anything really.
right, but obviously it's a lot of it is like going to be
Yeah.
like Monster Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon, like things like that. So I feel like there's always people that go to like video game conventions that are pleasantly surprised when they see really good artists and they might buy, but like it is also like the intention of it all. Because like I know when I go to anime convention, my marquee thing that I want to see, well, other than just cosplayers, but is the artist alley.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I know that people like you said that go to comic cons, they're going for autographs and celebrities. People that are going to video game conventions are generally going for like the esports tournaments or to play the games themselves. So I think that's also like what's the intention of the attendee versus how
Yeah.
does what you're selling fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense though. Um, so I want to know about the artist alley community and the behind the scenes of the artist alley community, if you will. So I know that there's like a whole community of artists because everyone talks, right? And it's like the
Mm-hmm.
cosplay community too. Like when you're in the space of cosplay guests and convention cosplay coordinators and convention heads, like they all have like spaces where they talk. And I'm sure it's the same for artists themselves, right? How
Mm-hmm.
has like finding that community been for you? And like how has that helped you kind of navigate through your space as becoming like a businesswoman in this like whole realm of artist alley?
So like I said, I'm a part of like a lot of Facebook groups and Discords, and like, and that's where artists will like talk about their experiences and their recommendations and things like that. Um, and I think it's kind of like like you kind of need those spaces, because otherwise, like, how would I know about that con all the way in Alabama, or like, things like. So it's been a lot. I've learned a lot through those communities, and like I said, I have a core group of friends that also do it. Like that really helps to like plan to travel with them, and like to um, kind of both like, oh, you can find out how they did an event and know if you should apply next time and things like that. Um, and that's the thing. Also, is like it's you can know what conventions are good, but also just never get into them. So it's like that's something, like I mentioned, the competitiveness. It's like that's one thing that is scary about what I do, is there's no guarantee that you'll get into the shows every year. So far I've been very fortunate that I do have a full schedule every year, um, so I can do this full time. There's a lot of artists I know they rely more on their online, or they rely on more on doing like freelance on top of Artist Alley, because there's a lot of people don't do it full time because it's so inconsistent. Um, but with those communities, you can kind of learn. Well, you can learn how to do it, but then I also feel like it's also been a little misleading to some people, and they expect it to go well when other people say they like say they did well at a show, but then they don't do well at a show. Mm,
Oh, I see. So like
which
what you said with like depending on the art and who the artist is, and probably even the given year of how the convention is structured and how many people they accept. Right? All things you said
mm,
already, they artists can expect one result and throw a lot into it, like kind of like flying across the country for it, right? And investing all of this money and time, but then they don't get the result that they were promised. I'll use that in air
mm-hmm.
quotes, right?
Yeah, there's I feel like that because there's been a huge influx of Artist Alley vloggers, which more power to them. I don't have the time to like also do that on top of everything else. So like that's good on them. Like that's awesome. But I feel like it gives this false like picture of what we do, cuz it's like there's so much work that goes into making it happen. And there's a lot of them like I have at this point 7.5 years put into this. So I have the like I know what I need, what sells well, what like I have the experience and the knowledge. And there's people that come in and they expect to just do well either off the bat or expect to do the same as these people that have been doing it for so much longer. Um because they talk about doing great and do and stuff, but it's like that's kind of a small percentage I feel like of the artists. I definitely feel like it's most artists aren't making enough for it to be their only income. Like at least again, it depends on the shows. So it's like
Right.
so I feel like a lot of people have false uh like
Expectations.
expectations.
Yeah.
Which I'm not trying to be like a downer, but I think it's just the reality. Like
No, it is. It is
mhm,
reality. It's like it's it goes with I think any type of like space or any type of like community. It's like the expectations are one thing, but the reality is like the proportion of people that might be able to make their full income off of Artist Alley, the proportion of people that can make their full income off of cosplay or anything, right? It's like
mhm,
so it's gonna be such an under such a small number. It's like not gonna be like representative of anyone and everyone, right?
mhm,
And I can see that there can be this expectation where it's like, oh my gosh, you go to artist alleys and you make like $10,000 in a weekend, dollar signs, like I want to do this. This seems like something I can just do, right? And it's
mhm,
not necessarily that easy, especially when you have to take into the logistics of it all and balancing out the cost to run a business. And that's actually something I want to talk to you about too. Is
mhm.
how did you didn't go to business school? You did not
I wish I
like.
did.
Yeah,
It would have
that's
helped
what
a lot
that's
more
what I was
than
thinking. I was like, you were going to school for sculpture and art,
mhm,
yet I feel like most of what you do now is you literally run a business. You
mhm.
have to like, do everything that goes. You have to pay taxes. Like it's like all of these
A lot
things
of
that you have to.
taxes.
Yeah, you're self-employed. You are
Mhm.
self-employed. So like how did you even begin to wrap your head around managing a business, inventory, like factories, like paying like taxes, being a self-employed person? Like how did you even like do all of this?
It was just like a lot of just learning as I went and just building on it and like learning from everything, like what has worked, what hasn't. And also just and like you talked about like the resources online, like that helped with learning a lot. And um I had to like slowly build my inventory, and I had to slowly like improve my portfolio. And like it was a lot of self-teaching, but also a lot of resources online and things like that. So I still am not perfect at it whatsoever, but but that's the thing though, is like there's the good parts of being self-employed where it's like you make your own hours and you tell yourself what you need to do, but at the same time it's all on you. So I guess like that's the like, because it's all on you, you kind of have to figure it out. So I guess that's also part of it. Like if I don't remember to apply to a con, oh, next year I don't get to do it. Like it's kind of like I have to be on top of everything. So it's kind of like, I guess yeah, that's that. Like you just have to. I had to learn it
You just
all.
have to take
So
ownership of it.
yeah,
How do you keep straight all of the different conventions you have to apply to?
spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets. So like, but
Yes.
like the feel like I feel like conventions open up their applications for Artist Alley like at a different, like a lot of them open at different times
Every
every
con's
year.
different.
So
That's the
like
thing.
how do you like, it's like, oh, like, well, I mean some cons are probably more similar than others. Like I can imagine, I would imagine, maybe
Mhm.
I'm wrong here, that like Dragon Con or like Anime Expo might release their Artist Alley applications at a very similar time each year, whereas other conventions might be like very different. I don't
Those are
know.
both kind of unique ones. They're kind of different. Like AX has a partially like, they've changed it a lot over the last couple of years, but they have a sort of rebook where they prioritize the same artists each year. But they, last year was the first year that they juried, so not everyone got to come back that was originally in it the year before. They actually cut out like people, which they normally don't do that way. They usually were just first come first serve, and now they've turned into a jury system.
Hmm.
So they juried the rebooking and the new artists. So I have a higher chance of getting back in, but I could still be declined next year. But I think, see, that's the one thing is like that's part of the drama around cons is like some cons are so inconsistent with when the apps are out, or like they'll give you such a short notice of acceptances, or like it's a lot to keep track of. So that's a lot of my job. I spend a lot of time on these Artist Alley discords, like keeping my eye on like people posting applications being coming out, and like when there's like events that people recommend, and like keeping track of the dates of everything. So it's kind of just like you just have to always check because it's not consistent. And then every convention is different on how you apply, like if it's first come first serve, jury, or lottery. So it's like that's a lot of my job is just keeping up with all that. It's like
When it's juried, what do you
mm,
submit usually? Like what, like pictures of your
I have a
art or like,
portfolio website. I use ArtStation. A lot everyone uses different places for it, but I just have a set portfolio that I can link to. That includes like pictures of my booth and products and stuff like that.
okay.
Um, but like I said, I've been very fortunate that I feel like with when it's jury, my chances are pretty good to get in because my stuff's pretty different compared to other RSLE tables. Both, well, I have gone away a bit from the resin stuff. I do feel like that helped my booth stand out a bit, but it wasn't what was selling as well. So that's kind of been my like new, like I've been worried that without that, maybe I don't stand out as much, but just my subject matter also is just very different.
Yeah,
So,
wait, let's talk about that because okay, you
mhm.
obviously, we talked about a lot about your sculptural background, how the first items you made were little sculpted dragons that were cast and hand painted, and
Mhm.
then you had your stickers. You even had like actual like prints at one point too, I
Yeah, I
think.
had a little mini
Yeah.
prints.
Yeah, little mini prints. And then you
Mhm.
started doing more like charms, acrylic charms, and then you started doing the enamel pins. And like, I guess,
Mhm.
how has the journey for you been in your evolution of product offering throughout the Dwagon space? Because it's
Mhm.
very different today than where you started,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, when I started, so I had the sculptures, I had the origami dragons, I had the stickers, and I had buttons, like pin back buttons, which when my memory of like going to cons was always like that's what you got, or these little buttons and
With the button
stickers. But
press.
yeah, I never actually I never got one. I always outsourced that. But that was kind of like in my mind that was Artist Alley. That's like what you expected to find. And they were like that's why I started with it. They were all like cheaper to get produced things. So it's a good starting point, and that's where most people do start. You that's something that a lot of new artists are like, oh, I want to have all these things right off the bat. You need to start small so you can build up the revenue, so then you can afford to invest in more products.
Right.
So I didn't even so these all these pins back here, I didn't even have them until like 3 years into my business, because those are so much more expensive to produce than buttons and stickers. So that's something like you start small and you build up and you kind of learn what sells and learn, and also like what do you want to sell. But yeah, kind of that's the thing is also like with pins, have become my main product, my biggest seller. Well, there's other people that they talk about that their pins don't sell at all for them. That's like only charms that sell for them. So even from artist to artist, it's going to be different, like what works for them. But but people like want to have everything right off the bat, and it's like no, it takes time to build up all those things. But but yeah, like it just comes from experience. That's like the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
um is just learning your audience and learning what works.
How many different designs do you have? Do you know?
So the actual designs, like characters, it's I think 135, but I have two versions of a lot of my designs, like the shiny Pokemon with the regular Pokemon. I have like I think it's 222 different pins. I'm a little crazy. Most people don't do this.
Wait. So when you go to your booth and you have your full booth set up and you look at it, there could be 222 different dragon designs,
Well, pins.
pins.
But then I also have the same design, like the base designs as the stickers. So there's 135 stickers and there's 135 charms, and there's I also have lanyards and tote bags and whatever. But so I have like over 500 individual different items to pick from.
Are there
So
any?
that's what. So but again, like I said, I've been doing this 7.5 years. It's built up over that time. I started off. I think I had 40 designs was my first. Like I made sure to have like a good selection of 40 when I started.
How do you determine what to incorporate as a new ad into your mix, and how do you know when to discontinue one?
So that's actually really relevant because my Kickstarter that I just did ended yesterday to add new designs. So I do at this point I do it like once a year where I do a Kickstarter to help fund the next year's like designs. So that's another reason I have this many is I've done a Kickstarter to fund every single one of them. So that's how I was able to grow my collection that I offer. Um, but I spent so much time trying to figure out. I have such a long list of what I want to do, but it's a balance of space and what will sell well, what do I want to draw. um there's so many factors. But it's kind of just having again to balance that, like figure out like I did an Avatar design because Avatar's my favorite series, but the dragons aren't a big part of it, but I was like I want to do this design, so I did it. And then I did a ton of Pokemon ones because I still have such a long list, and that's what people want. So it's
Hmm.
like, so it's a balance. And I really only retire designs if it's like if I notice it's really behind everything else, because I keep track of every single sale. That's a big like I keep track of every single sale of every single design. I have spreadsheets to show so I can kind of keep track of that. A lot of artists don't do that like as in depth, and I'm like I want to know. So when I have this many designs, I need to know. I
What's
need to know if I
performing
need to
well?
be yeah, if they're performing well enough, if I need to restock them, because pins take forever to restock. So like I have to far in advance be like planning with how many conventions I have coming up, like how many I need to order, like 4 months in advance, and like it's a lot to keep track of with this much. But
Well, yeah, exactly. And sales
mm,
history has to dictate how you plan your ordering for your inventory and also what you end up bringing to conventions, because
mm-hmm.
every item you bring to a con adds weight for bags. It takes away from other things that you could be selling instead. It takes up
Mm-hmm.
real estate on your table, and also like obviously you're paying for all this product and you expect to turn it around. So like if you were blindly selling 222 different enamel pin designs and you didn't know what was selling to who, like you could have a general idea like, oh yeah, I haven't sold that one in a few conventions, but at the same time it's like how would you ever know like you said, like you have detailed information to track, like
Mm-hmm.
per SKU, I'll call it,
Yeah.
like what you're selling, which is so helpful, I imagine, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like, planning in your business going forward too, right?
Yeah, we have like I have a list of like exactly if I bring this amount of each design, it's the exact weight for 50 pounds for all four of our checked bags. So I know like that's exactly what I can bring.
That is so scary. Oh my god. That's a whole level of planning that is so crazy. Like, I mean, we're talking about all this, but when you get into the nitty-gritty of being an artist and having this as your business, it's so much planning down to the pound on the baggage. Because if you end up going over, that's like, now Southwest is like
Yeah,
$125.
they upped it, so I always make sure that I'm not going over.
Well, exactly. It's like how many pins you sell for, like, yeah, it's crazy. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah. But no, it's just interesting because, like, obviously you said you did not start with enamel pins. Is that something you have to work up towards?
Hmm.
How did you eventually determine to retire out your resin sculpted dragons? That what started your whole business?
Yeah, that was a more recent thing. I think my last con I had them at. I brought them back for Dragon Con, but I my last like earlier in the year. I think it was Momo. Not no, not Momo. It might have been yeah, I think it was Momo. So back in like May or so, I made the decision because combined with all the events I do, because this year we have 21 on the schedule for this year, so I'm gone 21 weekends of the year.
Every other
Pl-
weekend, basically.
yeah, and then plus keeping up with all the business side of everything. At the time, I was also casting and painting dragons constantly when I was home, and it was just like just to keep up with the stock to have them for the shows. So it's just kind of like, and the thing is, they slowed down in sales a lot in recent years, and I think a big contributing factor was the rise of 3D printing.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't hand paint those though, so they're able to, and a lot of times they don't even make the designs. So it's kind of like, so if someone can get this really cool dragon that's like moves for like
Right.
$10, they're not gonna buy my little hand painted one for 27, which is what they were. So it's just kind of like, I think that was a big contributing factor, which it's not anyone's fault, but I was just like, there's just not an audience for this like there used to be. So I was like, so I'm spending all this time for them to not sell nearly as well. I could be spending that time on other things. So that kind of became the reason for like me discontinuing them. It was just not worth the amount of physical labor that
Right.
they needed for how well they sell. So it was unfortunate. I that my biggest fear was if not having them in my portfolio will affect my jury results. I
What
don't
do you mean
know.
by that? Elaborate.
Well, I'm just worried that that's what made my portfolio stand out. But I don't know because it's a very different product for Artist Alley. But if that it's not a common product because from my experience it wasn't selling that well. So is it worth being able to stand out for versus actually selling? Um, my plan, I wanted to wait until I got to this point, but I keep delaying it. My plan is to replace them with plushies. That's the goal.
Oh,
So I'll
okay.
have a 3D dragon, but just in a different form.
Hmm.
Um, so that's my next year plan. Finally, is to actually get those started. I want to have my own little original Dwagons as plushies.
That's
That's been
so
my
cute.
goal since I started. Like I've dreamed of that. Like I see my collection of like ones I've bought up there. I have even more over there, but so I was like, I want my own that I designed. Um, so I think that like once I actually have those, I'll feel a little better about like
The have you
retiring the
have you
resin stuff.
had any juried Artist Alley submissions since you have discontinued the resin sculptures that have you've submitted through yet, and you've noticed a difference on? Or
Well, that's it. There's just no way to really know because like
yeah.
most they never really give feedback when you get results, and it's even before like it's so hit or miss if you're gonna get in because of how many people apply to these shows. So I don't know yet. It just makes me nervous, but so far like I already have 7 cons booked for next year so far. So like so far I'm doing okay. We'll see. Um, but I think the plushies will help fill void in my portfolio once I get those produced.
No,
But
sure. Our
mm,
plushies, one of the more, I imagine they're one of the more complex and one of the more expensive ventures that you could
that's
go
why I
into as an
haven't yet.
artist, right?
Is
Okay.
because I'm scared because I've heard stories of where it can take like forever to get your prototype to a point that you're happy with. So it's like we'll see. Hopefully they get close on the first try. We'll see. But
Yeah, I've gotten some like pretty hilarious plushies. Like, I don't know if I ever showed you this one. I got this one off Twitter from an artist. It's called the Porb. It's a Pikachu orb.
oh, I love them.
It's literally like a round Pikachu, and he's an artist on Twitter, and every day he posts a new one of these doing something. Just a
Oh.
little doodle of one doing something every day. And then I also like I think I Anime Expo I showed you my long Pikachu, which is like over in the corner. I think the plushies are so fun. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that like but it is hard because you have to balance a lot of different things in terms of design complexity versus cost,
Mm-hmm.
because if they get too expensive, no matter how detailed they are, people are just not going to want to buy them at a certain point because they
Yeah.
expect it to be like a mass produced plushie cost, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
not what this
At least in
is.
artist alley, I feel like you can explain, or a lot of people already understand that like it's artist made, like
True.
designed and stuff. So at least they would. It is because you can't compete with the like if a big company can order like 10,000 of a plushie, it's gonna cost less than if I can only order like 50 to 100 of them. So it's
Hmm.
like it's we'll see. I don't know yet. That's next year's venture to figure out. Um, but yeah, that's also a thing is like um the changing in artist alley pricing has changed a lot too since I started. Like with inflation, it's just gone up a lot. Like when I first made my pins, I was selling them for 12.
Hmm.
They're 17 now, and that even then I'm debating having to raise them again because in artist alley, that's people are selling them for like more for the same size for more than that. So it's kind of like being it's a balance of being competitive pricing, but also like not underpricing and not like and also what's the max people are willing to spend on something. So that's even a whole balancing too, is like just pricing your stuff.
Right. And is it also like indicative of cost to manufacture? Like you're seeing like increasing costs from your factories that you're using to make the enamel pins?
And that's a really big worry for next year.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Because obviously, I imagine a lot of these factories that make enamel pins are all in China, right?
I've already heard like some people. I think I had an artist friend that was saying that like there's some places already preemptively increasing the prices because they're expecting increases in pricing. So it's definitely gonna affect uh, anything produced next year. It's gonna go up. So
Wow.
we'll see. We don't know by how much, but I definitely expect that next year, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
because pins is an example of something that there are no U.S. alternatives. There just
There's
doesn't
just the
exist.
manufacturers for the enamel
Mm-hmm.
pins just like this do not exist in the United States.
Mm-mm. So it's not like I could get them produced locally. Like it's just
Right.
not an option. So we'll see.
Wow, that's so crazy. Having to contend with like geoeconomic like problems and changes as a dragon vendor.
I
It's
just
like
wanna. I'm just gonna exist here selling my dragons, and
I
that's all I
know.
want to do is make people happy with dragons. You know,
Okay, actually, this is funny. I want to talk about misconceptions of being an artist and convention selling life. So like we talked about the
a
expectation
little
a little
bit.
bit
Mm-hmm.
about, the false expectations of being able to be immediately successful. But like what are some things that people that have never been an artist selling in an artist alley might not realize that's part of your reality in terms of this being your job and like, being a huge part of your life?
I feel just the fact that it takes over your life. You kind of like you can't do this without wanting to be like 100% in it. I think is the biggest thing because it does just take over. Because it's like sure I'm home all the time, but like if I don't work on stuff, it's just not going to get done. If I don't apply to these cons, it's just not going to happen. And it's like it's just I don't know how to word it. It's just like I feel like people expect it to be
Like easy breezy or
more easy,
like
but it's like at the same time like I still wouldn't change my job. I can't imagine doing anything different at this point cuz I get to do what I love. I get to make dragons and that's my career. I always remember uh I think it was in middle schools when I started like drawing dragons, and it was like my third or fourth project of a dragon. My mom's like, "When are you gonna do something that's not a dragon?" And I guess never. So I get to do what I love. It's a lot of work, but I it's very rewarding because of like it's all me. Like I made everything. It's all like and I get to share that with people. So it's like I wouldn't change it, but also for anyone wanting to do this, you have to be all in.
Right. You have to be
Hmm.
fully committed and invested into it. Or, you know, you can definitely, I mean, look, you started with it being kind of an experimental, like, hobby, right?
Hmm.
Where it was like, oh, like, let's see how this goes. Like, we'll just try this out. And then as you dove in, you're like, yeah, we're going to give 100%
Hmm.
because it ends up being, taking over your life, as you said. Um, what about this is just something I find interesting. Like you talked about being admitted to different conventions, the different ways they could either jury or randomly select or first come first serve or legacy. Like some conventions have
Rebooking.
legacy tables,
Mm.
right, for rebooking. What about the costs of booths? That's something that I think a lot of people probably that aren't artists have never even thought of or have never even heard about. Like
Hmm.
how can booth costs vary from convention to convention, and like do you have an expectation for what a booth should cost?
It's definitely gone up in recent years. And there's also a problem of like new cons being like, oh, other cons charge this price, so we're going to too. But and then not being worth the price. I feel like it's definitely it must be like between 2 to 400 range is like normal for an RSLA table at this point for a full weekend convention.
Okay.
It used to be lower, but that's more like but it's going to be expect between 2 to 400 is like normal now. Exceptions to that obviously are like AX. AX is like I think it's almost $700 now,
Oh
and
wow.
then the most I spend on a table is my Dragon Con booth. But again, that's not Artist Alley, so that is a booth like in the it's not the full exhibitor booth. It's called a dealer's boot table. But I still spend for a double booth in there. I spend 1,400. So that's my
Oh,
highest cost.
so is there a reason why? Wait, so it's a double booth, so it's like basically
A
twice as
double.
big
Mm-hmm.
as a normal artist alley booth would be.
Yeah, but it's in the dealer's Dragon Cons again. Like that. That's like the only con I do that's different than like all the others. So that's an exception. Like most exhibitors at other cons are more like that price.
Okay.
Um, but for me, that con is worth that higher cost. So that's the biggest thing is you can't make money without spending money. Unfortunately, sometimes it can be a lot depending on the convention, but um and I feel like a lot of artists also are like, "Oh, I just want to make back my expenses." But then it's like, why are you doing the event then if you're going to just break even?
Why are you
It's
here?
like
No.
but but yeah, so but when it's the 2 to 400 average, like that's usually like no problem for me. Like to those expenses plus traveling, like I travel a lot. Luckily, since I travel so much, I actually have the companion pass. So whenever I'm flying, my husband flies for free with me, which helped cut down costs a lot this year.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then hotel costs. I'm lucky that I do have my RSLE group, so a lot of time I get to split my hotel costs. But between like table, hotel, flight, food, all that, it can be expensive. I spend minimum $1,000 when I travel to out of
Right.
state conventions. So I think a lot of people also don't realize that. Like when they see your table at the con, they don't realize you spent that much to be there. It's like no, there's no way you would know that, but it's like it's a lot to just attend the convention.
Right. And like I think something else that people might not know is I have never seen you not 100% on at a convention. And what I mean by that is obviously working artist alley is exhausting. You're there like how oh my god, the hours. So wait, how long can the hours go? Like in your experience, what's the earliest you've ever had to be at your table and what's the latest you can remember being at your table?
uh, I don't know what the earliest. I feel like on average it's like 10 to like
What was Anime
7.
Expo? How early was there Anime Expo? 'Cause
Oh,
that
they
was
did. It
early.
used to be 10, but this year they did 9, so it was 9 to 6.
Okay.
But again, every convention's different. So, but I feel like 10 is usually the start for conventions, and then most cons end at like 7. But there are like exceptions. I haven't done it, but Otakon I heard the artist alley's open to like 10 every night. I'm just like, when do you get to eat?
Have you been to Otakon?
Not yet. One day. One day.
Okay.
But I think San Japan's also pretty late. I think it's like 8 or 9. Like I think that's might
Maybe.
have been the latest I've done. But but yeah, it just changes from every convention. But it's kind of like artists want to eat too.
Well, that's the thing I'm saying. Like, okay, so you're there for like almost like a 10, 11, 12 hour day
Mm,
in the artist alley. Luckily, you have someone with you,
mhm.
usually your husband or someone helping you at the booth, right? So at
Yeah.
least you have a human being that you could like leave and like run to the bathroom or like grab like some chips or something. But like, I feel like it's so when I see artists and they're just like tired and they're like resting almost at their booth, I totally sympathize and I get it because it's exhausting. But
Mm.
you are always on, and but you are like literally always like you were standing there, literally like helping people. Like you are always 100%, and I'm like, I think that speaks to your passion for doing this, but also like I don't know, like I feel like you must just really like this because like because you're always like your energy level is always there even at the smallest convention. Like I might come to you and be like, "Hey Larissa, how's this convention going?" You're like, "Well, it's certainly a convention." But you'll still be giving 100% attentiveness to the people coming
Well, yeah, of
through.
course. Like it, because at that point it's a customer service job, I guess. Like so, you kind of like it's just a general courtesy of being, nice and helpful. But yeah, like if a convention's not going well, you don't want your customers to know that, because then that's not gonna help the situation either. Um, like I guess the example was Oni a little bit. uh Oni was one I avoided for a long time. I tried it this year. I won't be back. Um, but I'm not gonna have people that did come like have a bad experience at my
Right,
booth.
right.
Um, but because like it's not like I just did a dragon booth for no reason. Like I do love all these dragons. Like that helps. Like I can have conversations with people about them and share in the dragon love with people. Um, and that's the thing too, is like it's nice that like all this work it kind of pays off when you get to see that person excited. Like people run up to my booth and be like, "Dwagons!" Like they get so excited. So it's like that's the very rewarding part of it. Um, so I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy it.
Hmm.
Like so because I would suck if I didn't enjoy that part of it. Um,
Right. You have to like want to interact with people and
mhm,
fans. I mean, at the end of the day, you were here at the beginning because you were a fan and
mhm,
are, and like that it kind of feeds back into it. So you really have to be invested and want to be here to be able to be successful, I think,
mhm,
and be willing to change and adapt to the times, which is something that we talked about too with you having to evolve your products and change and kind of grow with the changing demographics of what people are buying and what's offered. On that note, I want to talk about something. So art trends. So we talked about the buttons, right? The
mhm.
little buttons with the pin back that
Yeah.
like I feel are old school and some people still
Mhm.
do them and some
Yeah.
people still buy them. I think generally probably much less so than like 10 years ago.
There
um
used to be shrinky dink charms in the artist alley. This has definitely changed a bit, but there's definitely still some like there's since they're low cost and easy access, a lot of people still have other products like the pin, like some people have the pushback buttons or homemade stickers or even the homemade prints. Like that's easy access stuff. So of
What
course there's
about
going
what
to
about
always
the
be it.
what about the prints on pen printer paper? Can you condone
I
printing
don't
out
condone.
prints on 8.5 by 11 white paper and your Canon at home, and then selling the prints at Artist Alley?
At least you don't really see that. That is the thing, is like the professionalism of Artist Alley has definitely increased a lot. Like people, it's I think it's changed a lot from, oh, I'm an artist, I'm just showing all my art. It's kind of turned it more into businesses. Like we have all built our business with it, like a theme and a like identity. So
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like that's a bigger part of booths now than it used to be. Um, so you don't see that, at least, that much. But
Right. But you saw like the what was like the growth of enamel pins. It definitely has been, because I feel like, okay, and this is my perspective as a consumer of art and artist alleys. Maybe I'm like a little bit off here, but I feel like when I first started going to conventions, it was much of the like button with the pin backs, and
mhm.
then it was the acrylic charms that would be like on like a little, and they still sell acrylic charms, but like
Yeah,
acrylic
I
charms
do
for
too.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was just acrylic charms. It was like enamel pins were like not a thing. And then enamel pins started being slowly introduced, and then they just like exploded. And I feel like almost every artist that I see has an offering of their art with an enamel pin. Maybe it's not their main focus. Like I feel like for you,
Mhm.
you have a very high focus on your wide variety of enamel pins, but some artists will have like one or two things. And I feel like that happened, and then I feel like now you're getting these like really complex, like mechanically engineered types of like
Can I
pins.
actually?
And
I have something to show then.
yes, oh yes, yes, yes,
It
yes, your
just came like
bags.
last week. This
Wait,
is
wait,
the
wait.
new little
Talk about
one.
it. Talk about your bags. Wait, wait. So we don't even talk about your bags yet. Okay, so in the theme of changing your product offering with the
Mhm.
times, you decided to make Ida bags.
Yes. So because pins are like my main focus now, it made sense to have something that correlated to pins. So Eda bags have definitely become really popular in artist alleys because people customize them like so much. Like it's a very unique to you product. Like, oh, I'm the only one that has this. So that was something I never thought I like, because I was intimidated by the process, like, and the cost of doing
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But like again, with for me, like any of these ventures have been funded with Kickstarters. That's something I would always recommend to anyone if you're unsure how something would do. Is that Kickstarter is a great, or just any. There's other platforms, but a campaign to fund pre-orders pretty much, is a great way to see if there's interest in it, and to have much lower risk in trying something new. Um, it's the only way I have this much. but but yeah, so that was something that I'm really happy and pleasantly surprised with the reception for my Eda bags. I did the full size Eda bag, and now I have the more accessible mini one. Uh,
And of course, they're dragon wings.
yes.
You have your full dragon wing set for the big bag, and then you have your
Hmm.
like half bag, which is like the one half the wing, right?
Yeah. So I'm calling it a clutch, but because it's a smaller, but it's a smaller size option for people. But yeah, that's not something I ever thought I would do. But I think it's been more accessible. I guess like that's why you're seeing these products in our Sally, is because um we are making enough from our businesses to fund these new products. So that's something that I think artists are doing to be able to stand out more and to offer more useful items. And so because that's a common thing nowadays, is people being like, I don't have space for prints or more charms or more pins.
Mm.
So there's been more of a shift towards more useful items, and things like that. So it's really like you said, like it's just changed so much since I even started doing Art Sally. What you expect to find in an Art Sally nowadays.
It's
Um,
actually so on point because you said useful items. I've seen
mhm.
things that I definitely did not see before. Like I've seen cooking ware, like oven mitts, aprons, spatulas. I've seen like bath towels. I've seen robes. I've seen clothing. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
shirts and like full on like shirt pant combos. It goes on and on and on, and it's interesting how artists can you are correct when people say, yeah, I don't have room for prints. It's like that becomes a reality, like when you have
Mm-hmm.
these bigger items that people want to buy a lot of. That's why enamel pins are actually pretty great, is because they're so small in comparison, and especially when you have some place to put them, like a bag, you can
Mm-hmm.
just like collect, and there's a place to deposit all of them,
I also
right?
feel like a lot of people just are so attracted to them because they're like shiny and they seem more substantial because they're metal,
Well, because they
you know?
are, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that I think that's like, because even though they're more expensive than my stickers and charms, I sell a lot more pins still. It's just
Right.
there's more of a demand, I think, for pins.
Well,
So
and I've seen the ones too. Like I've seen like they've gotten so like complex in some ways. Like I was saying, like there's like ones that are shakers, like that have like all these little icons inside of like an enclosed like acrylic that you can
mhm.
shake. There's ones that spin. I have a slot machine one from Dungeon Meshi
That's
that's
cool.
like it has a little lever and you pull it, and the little it's a slot machine, and I'm like, this is crazy, and it's a
Mhm.
keychain.
Well, that's the thing is people like it's a combination of being artists, so it's not like you're just drawing art, but also just creative ways to use the art. Like I have a friend that has these cradles they made. So there's like a piece of acrylic that rocks and you get to pick which charms go into it, which characters, and it's like a cradle. And it's like like a actual like a physical thing that like
Yeah,
it's like how did you come up with making that? But that's what's really cool about the artist alley is like you don't know what you're gonna find in an artist alley because there's all these artists that are like coming up with these ideas because they want to make something unique and something different. So
hmm,
it is really cool to see. And I'm always like plushies are my next step, but I'm always like wondering like what do I want to do next? Like there's the possibilities are endless, really.
right.
Hmm.
What's your take on the gachapon machines that people have? Like at their booths, they'll have like the little capsules, and then you can like pay, but it's like random, obviously, because it's a
Hmm.
gachapon machine. Like, have you ever thought about doing that?
I only don't do it because like I don't personally also like participating in them because I like to know what I'm getting. But there's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of people that love the surprise aspect of it, so that's just personal preference. At that point, uh, like the only way I offer like because the benefit of doing it that way is for the customer it's usually cheaper if it's a gachapon
Mm-hmm.
versus picking it, and then for the benefit for the artist is that they either don't have to keep track of what's individually selling with it, and also it's a good way to get rid of like either old stock or stock they're just trying to cycle out. So like there's benefits for like both people, but my way of getting rid of like old stuff or B grade stuff is I just do discount bins and people pick from it. Like I don't want people to be disappointed in what they get.
Right.
If I did do that, but I see plenty of people do that and have success with that though.
Yeah. What about stamp rallies? I want to talk about stamp rallies for a second. Wait, I want to go off about stamp rallies for a second. Okay, so here's my take, and you can
Mhm.
completely disagree, but like, I'm here thinking, if you are an artist,
Mhm.
wait, let's take a step back because people might not even know what this is. A stamp rally, you describe what a stamp rally is, and then I will give you my
Okay.
reason why I'm angry about the stamp rallies.
Okay, so I'm probably not the best person to talk about. I've only participated in I think 3, but like I'm well aware of stamp rallies. So it's usually a collection of artists will come together with a themed rally where you by either visiting or purchasing from all their booths, you get a prize. Is kind of the idea. It's supposed to get you to visit each booth. It's supposed to share in like a love of a specific series. Like there's lots of benefits to it. Um, my experience, the free ones I didn't like because people just zipped to each booth and not even looking at the booth. Sure, it's understandable. But then the bigger rally I was a part of at AX, it's kind of hard to get someone to want to participate when there's like so many booths they have to buy from. So it's like it can be very hit or miss depending on how the rally is set up. Um, but there's definitely been stamp rally fatigue because there's been people like it was a new exciting thing like 2 years ago, but now there's like too
Hmm.
many of them because they've become more popular.
Yeah, I will say that's not why I'm mad, but there's something that is something I noticed is like at
Mm-hmm.
first it'd be like, oh my god, we have this cool thing. It's like you collect stamps, so you pay like five minimum purchase like
Mm-hmm.
$3 or $5 at a booth, and then you get a stamp, and then if you get like all five stamps, you go to this booth and you get a goodie bag, and it will just be a collection of secret. Well, not secret. That sounds weird. Mystery items that are from the artists, and it's going to be usually themed to what the stamp rally is themed, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
if it was like a Monster Hunter theme stamp
Mm-hmm.
rally, the expectation is that I would think every artist in the stamp rally would have a Monster Hunter item that they're selling, at least one Monster Hunter item that you
Mm-hmm.
can buy, and then the prize is Monster Hunter items in there,
So
right?
that's exactly like specifically. I did do a Monster Hunter rally at TwitchCon with it was only three other artists. We all had a bunch of Monster Hunter stuff. Our prizes were Monster Hunter related. Like that's the expectation. Yes, that's a good
And
rally.
I'm
I
gonna
feel
tell you why I'm
like.
pissed off, because I'm telling you, why are you why are you as an artist agreeing to be a part of a stamp rally if you have nothing that meets the genre of the stamp rally? Like, what is this? Because okay, every single stamp rally I've ever seen has been themed. I have never
Mm-hmm.
seen a stamp rally that was not themed. Like everyone has been like Pokemon or like Dungeon Meshi or Monster Hunter or
Mm-hmm.
something, right? It's all themed. Why is there artists in the stamp rallies that's like, oh yeah, mine's like Yu-Gi-Oh themed? They don't have one goddamn Yu-Gi-Oh thing that they're selling. So you get to their booth and you're like, why am I here? Like, I'm here for the stamp rally. Like, what is this? Like, why are you a part of this? Like, get out. Make something or get out. That's my thoughts. And I'm like, and the prize, if it's a Yu-Gi-Oh themed stamp rally, why am I getting Kirby? Why am I like, well, what is
I
this?
feel like those are very valid feelings. That's the thing is with stamp rallies. It's every group of artists is gonna do their own thing. So there's no like regulating that at the convention. So it's like there's actually a couple of conventions that have banned stamp rallies. I think
Oh,
because of
really?
people not being happy with like either not being happy with the prize or some people uh they run out of prizes. So you bought from each booth and you don't even get the prize. Like that can happen if they don't prepare enough prizes because there's no way to know how well it's gonna go. Um, so there are a lot of valid reasons to be wary, I guess. I think the only reason I can see these artists joining these rallies is they just want to be a part of a rally to bring the like attendees to their booth, but like why are you part of that specific rally then?
Well, that's what I'm
But
saying
and then
because
there's
it's
people
like,
that are part of like five rallies and I'm like where
oh, oh,
why?
oh, girl, oh, because you get to their booth, you're like, I'm part of the stamp rally, and they're like, oh, which one? And they open their CVS receipt of like all of their rallies they're a part of,
Mm,
and I'm like, this is out of control. And that's the
yeah.
thing. It was like the last booth I got to. It was like the booth 5 out of 5, where they had nothing that was from the nothing from
Mm-hmm.
the media, and I was like, why are you here? Like what? I was like, where is your Pokemon art? Oh, I don't have that. Why are you what? And they look at me like I'm crazy because I'm expecting them to have a Pikachu, and they're like, I'm so angry. I'm
No,
okay.
that's very valid, and I feel like that is something that artists. I think the artists are starting to learn that they need to be a little smarter with the rallies because I think general consensus is that they're not going as well as they used to a year or two ago. Um, and I think that people should like. I think it's like because, like I said, there's so much artists invest in doing these events, like a lot of money, a lot of time. They want it to go well, so they're gonna do all the things. They're like, oh, this is just gonna be good promotion for my table at this event to get people to come to my table. But like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not actually like fully a part of the rally, then
Then get
that's why
out.
I've only done a couple. Like, I don't have enough desire and interest to. I do well enough without them, so I don't need the extra
You're like, I don't need your
attendees.
booger
Like,
promotion from your little stamp rally. No.
I don't think it's. it's just not necessary. And there's a lot of people have been having more and more negative associations with it. Like I always felt like bad being like, "Do you want to be a part of this rally?" And then as soon as I mentioned that there's like money involved, they're like, "Eh." So
Oh, I see. Well,
like I don't want to push that on people, anyways. So
yeah, I
yeah.
get it. No, for me, like, I think it's actually kind of fun. Okay, it has to be something you're like really into, and if you are, then I think it's kind of fun.
And some people do
Um,
really unique, like really cool prizes that make you like want to do the rally because it's the only way you can get the prize. Like some
mm,
people do, like I know AX. There was a ton of like really complex, like interesting prizes, like big prizes, but it was like a lot of money to spend at like a bunch of booths. But like they made it so that it was kind of like, oh, this is like I need. So like that can be another cool way to do it. Like if there's like it's more thought out and more involved,
right.
but
That would
not
take a
just a
lot
goodie
of
bag of random items.
Right, and that would take a
Yeah.
lot of cross collaboration with the other artists
Mhm.
involved because those items, if they're going to be like, showing off this like really like intricate, expensive item, they're going
Mhm.
to have collaboration from all the artists putting in to fund that expensive
Yeah.
item, knowing that it's very intentional and not just like, oh, here's like a collection of like Monster Hunter items or anything. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, I guess it has its pros and cons, but also
Mhm.
like you said, an anime expo when it's such a huge artist alley and people a lot of times only have the time to see each booth once. Like, is it even going to be that effective? It's like I guess it could be because there's enough people
Mhm.
there that some people are going to make the time to go back and revisit the booths, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's so competitive because there's so much going on and it's so chaotic. Like, are they actually going to remember to keep track of this stamp rally page and like go to all of them?
Yeah. So I'm willing to like try some more out. Like I think we're planning like me with my this will be the first one that me and my friends put together ourselves because we all got into the same convention. So we ourselves are gonna like make a smaller like 3-person one, and I think that's gonna be really fun. And like it'll be like I think it'll go over better than like the other ones where I've just joined someone else's rally that like
Hmm.
it was like too many artists or it's a free one. So there's like yeah. So there's a place for them, but I feel like some people go too crazy with them.
I get that.
Yeah.
Um, Open-ended question. What makes a good convention for you?
So I kind of have like a minimum for my out of state like that I need to hit to be happy with it, and then like and there's a different expectation if it's one I drive to.
Mm, in
Obviously,
terms of sales.
yeah. Um, for me, it's purely like the sales have to be there for me to want to go back because since it's my full-time job there's a lot of artists that talk about like, oh, this is an okay con to go to as a vacation con, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Like I'm not gonna go to a con for vacation. um so it's like, so my expectations might be a little different. Like there's some other artists that like that's not their full reason for doing events. A lot of times they're doing it just to travel or just
Hmm.
to maybe they have friends in the area, so they just want to travel to that area, so they want the con to just be good enough for them to travel there. So but for me, like it has to be enough for my income. So and with how much time and money I invest. But
Right.
so
Okay.
but yeah, so like I have like my list of events that I have already done that I know go well, and then I have a list more on the list that are ones that other artists have consistently said are worth traveling out of state and worth the investment that I also apply to. So I don't really take major risks. Like I
Hmm.
make sure that like I feel like there's a good enough consensus around an event before I'll try it. Um and if it doesn't go well, I'm not gonna. I've never been in the red at any of my events.
Oh,
So
really? T.
so luckily, so at least in terms of for me, I've never been in, at least in that situation where I'm worried that I'm not gonna even make my money back. Um,
Gotcha.
so so yeah, so I just have like my like set expectations. So
Okay.
and I try to gauge them correctly. Like I try not to be like, oh, this little tiny event, I'm gonna make the same amount I made at AX. Like I understand I'm not going to.
Right.
So
Makes sense.
yeah.
And conversely, what makes a bad convention, it doesn't have to be tied to sales, but like anything else from your perspective, as an artist that has to cooperate and, and collaborate with a convention entity? Like, what makes a bad convention?
So a couple so something that I feel like from doing this is I realize a lot of the conventions don't care about their artists. I feel
You mean
like we're
rats in parking garages or something else?
like I feel like we're always like thought about last, which is unfortunate because I feel like we're a big draw for a lot of events. Um so again, it varies from convention to convention. Like some events are really bad about getting you all the information for like loading in and stuff, or some conventions give you super long hours. So it's like people will make time if the hours are shorter to come during those hours, or or sometimes they'll stick the artist alley in a really bad spot in the convention, or like there's all these factors are out of our control. So artists are just at the mercy of these events. So it's like that's something that's like unfortunate. There's not like a union for artist alley artists or something like that. I always say that like AX is like the worst working conditions that I put up with because it's AX. It's like I think it was my first year there. I was literally like they had like the doors open, so it was sweating I was sweating so much I could barely breathe because it's in a parking garage, but I broke records, so I didn't care. It's just like
You're like, I'm in really, really subhuman conditions out here, but we made money, so we are gonna deal with it. Put on a
what am
respirator
I
and
gonna
get
do?
a
Complain to
fan.
them? Like, I mean, it's
Right.
just like that is an unfortunate thing. Also, it's just like that. It's just it's you can't. It's all out of our control. Like artists being like, oh, is my like worrying about their position in the artist alley. Like again, you don't get to decide for like 99% events where your booth's gonna be, and that can affect how you do. And like, there's just so many factors that like, but like for events, for me, they have like reasonable hours, reasonable cost. Um, they have a good location with like hotels nearby that are not stupid expensive. Even better, there's I think very few cons, but some cons will have a specific vendor slash artist block of
Oh,
hotels
really?
set aside. It doesn't happen that often, but it does sometimes happen. Like
Okay.
our AX does do that. Um, so like that's nice, like a bonus if a con does that. Um, there was there was one con I think I've mentioned to you before. Emmy Detour in Minnesota.
Talk about them. Let's talk about them.
I don't. I heard they might have gotten rid of it, but the year I was in the artist alley, uh, they had a room, like a break room, basically that was full of like snacks and stuff, and they also had hot food every day that was for guests and artists and dealers and stuff. And they had a guy with like a sandwich cart that came around the artist alley asking if we wanted sandwiches. I was like,
That is sickening. That is
that was like
so good.
one of the few cons that cared about the artist.
That
Like,
is crazy because it's like that is so refreshing and like that's
mm,
honestly like a beacon of light and I'm like imagining that situation because it's like I've been to conventions as a guest where they don't even give you nothing,
mm-hmm.
like not even a bottle of water, bitch. They don't give you nothing. But then like it's so crazy because it's like I know that I feel, I mean, not the same situation, but in the same way that you're saying, like artists and artist alley generally can be considered like, you know, not considered by conventions,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like, you know, working conditions and like, you know, communicating on time and providing information. I feel like in a sense cosplay guests in terms of the total spectrum of guests at a convention are in the same boat because it's like at the end of the day they're like, oh well, what are they doing? They're just dressing up. And it's like, well, at the same time we're providing programming content to the convention and we're actively running the marquee event most of the time for a convention, like the
Mm-hmm.
cosplay contest. Like that's usually like the Saturday night programming that has the largest turnout in comparison to like most of the events. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like but then the cosplayers are still disregarded in terms of the contracts that they're offered and the conditions that they're able to garner for themselves as part of working with the convention, because they're just like, oh yeah, well, you're not a voice actor, so you clearly don't offer value. And I feel like that's like almost like with artists too, because it's like, oh well, you're not like, Sanrio, so we're gonna like stuff you into a corner with rats running through your luggage.
Oh, you guys just helped us pay for the venue with your booth costs, pretty much. It's kind of like how it
Yeah.
feels sometimes, or also by how much they charge sometimes. It's just like, oh, we're just gonna pay off the convention by selling these tables to you guys. Is kind of part of
How,
it.
what about the conventions that take deposits for artist alley tables, but then they are non-refundable?
I feel like so it depends on the con and how they have it. Like if it's upfront that like there's no refunds if you're accepted, like then you shouldn't be applying if you don't want to be accepted. But there should always be exceptions because like sometimes things happen, or like you end up having multiple events on the same weekend, or you have whatever. There's one company that charges you on application, which is Fan Expo, and they hold on to your money until they accept you or not. So they so I did so I did reapply to Fan Expo for next year because I just wanted to maybe give it another chance because it's the local Comic Con. So I got charged the $430 on application, and they've held on to that money since July, and I haven't had results.
And it's November.
And apparently, sometimes you have to fight to get your money back, even if you're not accepted. So they literally, and they run like 20 conventions around the U.S. So they just take these zero interest loans from all these artists.
They're taking these zero interest loans from these artists and then using that money.
I don't know how they're
to...
getting how they're allowed to do this, but that's what happens.
This sounds literally like illegal or something. I don't know.
It's the only event that I know that does this, but it's like it's like how are you allowed to do that?
That's so fucking crazy. Do they do that for like their dealers as well?
I'm
Do you
pretty
know?
sure.
Just for like all
I'm not
of
100%
them.
sure, but I'm pretty sure they would also do it for them. But it's like
That's so fucking whack. Oh
I
my
hope
god.
I get in, or I hope I get my money back. We'll see.
Wait, when does this convention happen? Do you know?
That one's always I think it's either end of May, beginning of June. It was similar time as the A-Con normally was.
Okay.
So
Well, you should find out. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know how far in advance generally is it, or is it all over the board in terms
it's
of
all
like when
over
you
the
find
board.
out?
Because
Oh.
like there's like right now I know because I think the earliest I know that I like applied, not rebooked. The latest out I know is I do have MomoCon in May next year. So like as far back out as that, I've already applied and gotten in.
Okay.
But sometimes they don't let you know until like a month beforehand, and it's like,
Oh my
okay,
god.
I guess I'll figure this out.
Fucking Fanime with their zero. No, Fanime. Oh my god. Fan
Yeah,
Expo.
no, Fanime is one of the ones that gives you like a month of a.
Oh
No,
really?
Anime Expo you find out beginning of the year, so AX is okay
Gotcha.
about that.
And
But
then Fan Expo with their zero interest loans. That's so crazy. That's so insane. And
just things that we deal
everyone just
with.
pays into it because you're like, oh well, you have to pay to apply.
There's a lot of new artists that don't realize they're getting charged on application. It's like
It checks the credit card right then.
yeah.
Done. Dear God.
I just see that question all the time pop up of being like, am I supposed to be charged for this? Did I get in? Like, no, we don't know.
It's a dog eat dog world out here. Oh my god. Well, thank you so much for being here. I had so much fun.
I could talk forever, so
No, same. I was like, I always say this to people, but I really mean it. Like, put me in a room and I will literally just go. But no, we could talk about this for literally forever. But I think it's so cool that you were able to take your passion and turn it into your career. And obviously, it's not all easy, and it does take a lot of work and time and true like pouring your everything into it. But I think it is really, really cool that you can look at all of you've done with yourself as a businesswoman and like everything that you have, all the experiences you've had throughout the past like years and all the friends you've made from doing this. And I think it's really cool.
yeah, I officially passed over 100 conventions sold at this year, so I'm very
Yeah.
thankful that I get to do what I love for my career. I get to do it with my husband full time, so I couldn't ask for it to be different. I hope I'll get into all the conventions again next year. We'll see.
Oh gosh, I'm sure you will. Okay, I'm gonna read the outro and then come to you at the end. Sound good? Cool. Okay. Thank you for joining another episode of the Cosplay Crunch. If you would like to submit a question, please email cosplaycrunchpod@gmail.com and please rate us on your podcasting app of choice as it helps the show grow and gets us to new listeners. You can follow us on Instagram at Cosplay Crunch Podcast for the latest news and announcements, and at YouTube at the Cosplay Crunch Podcast for the visual format so you can see behind Larissa and all of her racks of product. It's crazy. We're also at thecosplaycrunch.com. Larissa, all the Dwagons, where can we find you online? And do you have any parting words for our listeners?
You can find me at allthedwagons.com and all the Dwagons on basically all social medias. I guess just like if you have a passion for something and find a way to make it work, go for it. I guess is my parting words. And thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Thank you so much for being here. I had a great time too. And until next episode, we will see you later. Goodbye. All right. Let me stop it. The Cosplay Crunch podcast is hosted by Savage Cosplay, with post-production also by Savage Cosplay. Original theme music by Katie Fairbanks. Logo and graphic design by Owl and Coffee.